So, hello everybody, and welcome to the IACT IMDHA Presenters Series in preparation for the Hypno Expo 2018, which is going to be held in Daytona Beach on May 18th, 19th, 20th of 2018. What a beautiful time we have there at the lovely beach that you can see behind me. I will look forward to seeing you all there. In this series, what we're doing is interviewing people that are doing pre- and post-conference programs. The programs that we're talking about tonight, as a matter of fact, one of them will be presented by me, one of them will be presented by Donald Pelles, and those programs will be on Thursday, May 17th. So make sure that you make arrangements to book your flights, etc., accordingly, and make your hotel reservations so that you can join us for those programs if the topics that we're offering are something that you want to participate in. And with that said, I am going to slip over into the passenger seat and actually turn the steering wheel over to my friend Karen Hand, who will open the show tonight.
And there will be no backseat driving. Let me just tell you that right now. So keep in mind that you can always after watching this, go to the IACT IMDHA website and get your CEUs for participating with us tonight. You will get credit for this, and you'll learn a lot, of course. And thank you so much for joining us. We have a very special guest to start off the program tonight. Don Pelles will join us in a bit, but we're going to start off with a bit of an evolution in hypnosis. Michael Watson is evolving every single day, and he's a very special guest tonight. Michael will be talking on May 17th, on the Thursday before the conference, about evolutionary hypnosis. But let me just tell you a little bit about him, and then I want him to tell us a little bit more about himself. Maybe something really personal. I don't know what he's going to tell us, but we'll find out in just a moment. Michael, of course, is an international trainer of NLP and Ericksonian hypnosis. He's been practicing hypnotherapy for over 3 decades. Amazing for a man who's only 28 years old, but still. He's a former trainer for Salad Limited in the UK and on the training team for NLP of the Rockies and UP Hypnosis Institute. He's a diplomat of IMDHA and IACT Educator of the Year. He's a faculty member at HPTI and Michael's director of Phoenix Services for Personal Development. He's known for his lighthearted and caring style. He's known for some of his jokes, of course. Michael's training programs are as enjoyable as they are practical. He's developed mental work and evolutionary hypnosis, and it's cutting edge and offers a new skill set to hypnotists in contemporary practice. When he's not traveling and training, he lives in Orlando, Florida, where he maintains a private practice, and he is joining us tonight to tell us all about evolutionary hypnosis. Thank you very much, Michael, for joining us.
Well, it's great to be here.
From Daytona Beach tonight, it appears.
It appears, yeah. Things are not always what they seem, but yes, it appears, and a beautiful Daytona Beach it is.
And I know that I just told a lot about what you do and who you are, but the way you got into hypnosis is a pretty interesting story too. So will you tell us just a little about your evolution from one career into NLP and hypnosis?
Sure. Sure, and pardon me for this. You just asked that just at the right time.
I plan to do that throughout the entire time that we're together.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so keep it up. Well, okay, so I was a priest in the Episcopal Church. I'm just going to tell the fastest version of it that I can. And during that period of time, I went away to a Benedictine monastery for 2.5 years. So steeped in a meditative chanting tradition. And when I came out of the monastery, I was working for the Diocese of Chicago in pastoral counseling in a diocesan counseling center. And some of you will recall, those of us who are old enough to remember these days and these things, that in the late 70s and the early 80s, creative visualization and guided imagery was really sort of coming into the forefront in counseling psychology. Shakti Gawain's book on creative visualization, some of you are familiar with, I think was just about hitting the shelves around that time. So I was doing all these guided processes and things. And one day I had a client who said to me, you know, Michael, this is actually hypnosis. It startled me. I hadn't heard anybody clucking like a chicken or barking like a dog or doing any of those things. And that was all that I knew about hypnosis. I never waved a watch, So I was completely taken aback. I had an undergraduate degree in linguistics. And when I found out about hypnosis and about neurolinguistic programming, I was just ready to go. And just about that time, my husband had lost his job in Chicago, and we were thinking about moving somewhere else. Houston was booming at the time. And he showed me an advertisement for a woman that was teaching a hypnosis certification course in Houston, Texas. And I was so naive that I thought, surely hypnosis is such a specialized field that there's probably only 3 people in the world that teach it. So I figured I must go to Houston and study with this lady who taught a 30-hour class, 10 weeks of Wednesdays, 3 hours a night. And that was the whole deal. And at the end of it, I was pretty good at doing inductions, but I already was pretty good at doing inductions. Maybe got a little bit more from that. But while she was teaching the class, she was enrolled in a really early NLP practitioner training that was being run by Leslie Cameron Bandler, who was Richard Bandler's ex-wife, and a lady named Meetha Singleton in Houston. And so she started spoon-feeding us some of these ideas from neurolinguistic programming, and I thought, this is amazing stuff and really complements what I'm learning in hypnosis. So I picked up a book about NLP, and at the back of that book, I saw that I could get trained as an NLP practitioner, and all I would need to do was to move to Colorado. So once again, loaded up the van, moved to Colorado. I studied with the Andreases at NLP Comprehensive and their training team there, which was just a wonderful experience. And I assisted them at a few trainings. And after a while, they brought in Robert Dilts, who was one of the original researchers from California that had worked with John and Richard. And he was working on beliefs and their applications to health-related issues. His mother had been diagnosed with cancer, and he saw her to remission using the work that he was developing. So I was sold. So, of course, I did the only logical thing that a person could do. Again, I sold everything that I could, traded it in for a long back Plymouth Voyager van and drove across the country to California and parked in the parking lot at UC Santa Cruz, where I lived for a month while I did a residential training with Robert Dilts, and stayed in California and worked with John Grinder for a while. And during that time, there's quite a lot to this story, isn't there? During that time, I met Stephen Gilligan, who was a protege of Milton Erickson's, and Stephen Gilligan became really my primary hypnosis teacher through the years and mentor. And well, one thing led to another, and now I am on the board of IMDHA.
That is quite a story, and you did condense it down very well. Thank you, Michael. Let me just say, by the way, for those of you who are with us tonight, we do have your microphones muted. All of this will be recorded, and you can look back at it again tomorrow on the virtual chapter website on Facebook or on the IACT IMDHA website. But if you have questions along the way, type them in the chat room down at the very bottom of your screen. You can type them into the chat room, or you can go over to participants and raise your hand. And I will hope to have time at the end of this for you to ask your questions. But if you type them into the chat room, I'll try to slip them in as we go along as well. Now, on Thursday, before the conference starts, on Thursday the 17th, Michael, you're doing a full day of evolutionary hypnosis. So plan on coming to the conference a day early, because you definitely don't want to miss that. But tell me, what prompted you to develop evolutionary hypnosis? You've been evolving, obviously, all through your life. What prompted this? You'll have to unmute your mic, though, Michael.
Thanks again. Yeah, not only me, but everybody has been evolving, and I think that's just the thing. I was just in Brazil a couple of weeks ago, just to give you an example of something that strikes me and really has guided this search. And I noticed something really special, and that is that in America these days, if you do hypnosis with some audiences, not everybody, but some audiences, there are people that just aren't quite sure, or they don't know how to do it, or they want to, I don't know what it is. Maybe they're a little fussy, but you say to a client, take a gentle, easy breath and close your eyes. And sooner or later, there's going to be somebody that says, do I have to close my eyes? What happens if I don't close my eyes? I don't want to close my eyes. Will it work if I keep my eyes open? I noticed that in Brazil, that if I said to someone, take a gentle breath and close your eyes, not only would they close their eyes, but they would drop deeply into hypnosis and practically fall out of the chair. And I'm real clear about the fact that culture plays a large role in how we respond to hypnosis. Something that really has been important to me since the beginning is that I'm typically thought of by a lot of people as an Ericksonian, which isn't quite accurate, but pretty close. I'm more influenced by that, I think. But Milton Erickson has been dead for over 40 years. Dave Ellman has been dead for 50 years. And these two pioneers in our field, these two great people in our field that we respect and admire, we respect them and admire them because they were innovators. And yet what we do is we try to impersonate what they did 40 and 50 years ago. And I have a feeling that if they were still alive, they would be doing something different, primarily because the audience itself is different. If you look at some of the old videotapes of Erickson working with, there's a woman that I can think of in particular where Erickson does what's called the reverse set. And he'll end up getting her to nod and to shake her head back and forth for different things. And he ends up saying things to her that are just the opposite of true. He says, and you're not a woman, are you? And she goes, no. And, and all of these things, incredibly compliant and responsive to the fact that he was the doctor and she was just the mere client. This isn't the climate that we live in today. And so somehow or another, it simply occurs to me that we need to adjust our approach. If we really want to honor Milton Erickson, and if we really want to honor Dave Ellman, what we need to honor is that spirit of innovation that comes from them and continue to be innovators ourselves in our work and keep developing the field. So go ahead.
You mentioned doctors. I mean, what would medicine be if doctors hadn't evolved, hadn't moved it forward, hadn't kept researching and moving things forward? What would we be if you didn't do this, if we all didn't do this?
Mm-hmm. Sure. And in the middle of it, not only are our clients evolving, hypnosis itself is evolving, thank goodness. We do have some innovators. I don't want to suggest that we don't. And there are some new and exciting things coming down the road every day. We see lots of them, by the way, at the expo. Great chance to see people doing new and wonderful things. But also the technology is evolving. So, for instance, over the last year, as a lot of people on this call may know, especially if they come to the virtual chapter with any regularity, is that, here we are having this conversation on the internet with a bunch of people. And 10 years ago, we wouldn't have had the ability to operate this way. At this point in my career, I have been traveling so much that I've picked up clients from all over the planet. And 85%, I believe, of my clientele are people that I see online rather than in person. So the technology itself is evolving, and that's an important thing to keep in mind. I've been running classes called the Virtual Hypnotist to train people how to use online technology to do hypnosis sessions as well.
And without some sort of evolution, I mean, how could you possibly do a Dave Ellman hand drop online?
Well, that's exactly right. You certainly couldn't. And not until they get since they have USB ports and stuff, there may be some peripheral device that you can that will lift your arm and drop it. But we haven't quite come up with that just yet. But that's exactly right. So in response to that, evolutionary hypnosis really also has another notion behind it that I think is important. When we talk about people evolving, what I like to think of is individually we are evolving as well, and always have been. That somehow at the center of our being, I believe that there is an incredible greatness, an incredible brilliance that is trying to find its way out in the world. And sometimes it does that smoothly and easily. Sometimes that's really a difficult transition to make. Our job as hypnotists, I think, is to empower people through those changes and to support that evolution. And only 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, I guess, I think oftentimes when people were making serious changes, if it wasn't going smoothly, it would manifest in symptoms that would end up getting treated by a psychotherapist who would try to medicate a person out of the whatever kind of behaviors they were exhibiting. My notion these days is if clients are doing something that's a little aberrant or just not quite centered, I don't want to shut that down. I want to find out what that's about. I want to invite it to have expression and help it develop an appropriate expression that will work for them in the world as they, as they move forward in their life.
So we mentioned a moment ago about the element hand drop and online. I mean, that's next to impossible to do. There are ways to make something like that happen. But what else makes evolutionary hypnosis or hypnosis where we are today unique or different?
Well, again, it has at least for me, there are a couple of roots in some of the work that we've all seen already. I was particularly touched by Connie Ray Andreas's work with core transformation, something that Don Pelles, the guest later on tonight as well, has been working in and doing programs and trainings in, because it really had this idea of kind of finding out what is at the core of our being and bringing it forward. So I had seen that. I had worked with Stephen Gilligan, who talked about generative trance, which essentially was more of the same idea about expansion, about bringing forth what lives within a person, and arguably, by the way, a lot of what I do is so inspired by Gilligan that it could probably be called generative trance. But because there are some uniquenesses that are really sort of my own, I really didn't want to confuse the labels and have people be misled about what Stephen was up to when they were, watching my work. But evolutionary hypnosis is driven by a set of principles, and at the very center of that set of principles is this notion that our clients are coming out. The icon for me of this whole process is Helen Keller, and I think she illustrates the thing so well, because poor Helen, lost, desperate, trying so hard to make contact with the world and so incredibly frustrated, as her diaries show, until the right teacher came along. She had folks that she worked with before. I think it's not just the right teacher, but maybe a better way to say it is a sponsor came along in the form of Anne Sullivan, who essentially said to her, I know that you're in there, little girl, and come hell or high water, I'm going to do what it takes to bring you out. And bring her out she did. That's a real inspiration to me. And when a client says something maybe just as simple as, I want to stop biting my fingernails, or I'd like to stop smoking, or, it may be those kind of things, or it may be something, bigger and more esoteric. But even the littlest things are, to me, indications of the fact that the game is afoot, that evolution is taking place, and the question is, how can I best support that for my clients?
Boy, that is a departure from the traditional approach of suggesting change.
Yeah, well, it is. as a matter of fact, it is. I was interviewed a couple of months ago by Igor Ledakowski, who you all know. Igor is known to be the master of conversational hypnosis. And I thought it was kind of funny. I actually burst out laughing in the middle of doing an exercise with him. I guided him through a process. And what was so funny is I was explaining these principles to him. And I said, Igor, when I'm trying to tell people, and how outrageous that I'm telling them on Igor's interview, I'm trying to tell people that they should stop making suggestions. It really startled him. And of course, I say that with a little tongue in cheek. Certainly there are some suggestions that we make to our clients, but I think even more importantly are the suggestions that really come from within the client themselves. The question is how to bring that wisdom forward. As a new hypnotist, and if there are folks on this call that are really just starting out, I can remember every once in a while I'd get a client who came to me with something that I'd never seen or heard from before. Oh my gosh, I've got a client with trichotillomania. Now, back in those days, we didn't have the internet. So I was left to my own devices. But now, new hypnotherapists will run to one of the groups online, and they'll say, "I have a client with this condition. Does anybody have a good script for that?" And scripts are great. Don't get me wrong. They guide us, they lead us, they might give us some clues as to how to proceed. But at the end of the day, there's this challenge, I think, for some people that they think that they've got to be the master of every single thing. They've got to know all the suggestions to make for every condition that clients might show up with. And what an incredible burden that is.
Yes.
So at some point, when you recognize that the wisdom really is within the client, all of a sudden that burden falls away. And all I really need to do is to be prepared to invite that client's inner knowing to start to reveal itself in the session. And hypnosis is just the perfect tool in order to do that.
And for some clients, it's far more helpful to them and beneficial. They'll take their own suggestions. They don't really want to listen to anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're just telling them what to do, it may go for naught.
Yeah.
But if they're coming up with the insight that you pulled out of, it's a wonderful thing.
If I wanted somebody to tell me what to do, I would call my mother.
That's right. And she's complained that you don't call her nearly enough. So obviously, you don't.
Actually, my poor mother, actually, what she does say to me these days is, "Well, I don't know what to tell you, Michael," because she knows I've already made up my mind.
You know, Michael, you mentioned that there are some principles to evolutionary hypnosis. You alluded to several of them. How many principles are there, and can you share them with us?
Well, there are, 6 or 7 of them. I can share a few of them. One of them that, in the time we have, at least one of them simply is that hypnosis is evolving, that people are evolving, that, that evolution is happening. Another one is this notion about minimal suggestions and to stop making suggestions. But one of them that I think is really important is to recognize just how resourceful our clients are. Some of us have such big egos that we think, I am the great savior of my clientele. If they come to me, I'll be able to help them put their world right. Again, to me, that's really an incredibly tiresome burden to carry around. So it's the realization, I guess, of how resourceful and capable our clients are already that I think is really at the center of this. And if it's appropriate, I'd like to see if there's a way that I could do a simple little demonstration of something that illustrates that. So,
Would love it.
Okay. Well, we're looking at somebody's screen right now, which is kind of interesting. Someone is sharing their screen with us.
I was looking around for participants. I wonder if I did that. No, I don't.
Is that your screen?
That is not my screen.
Well, let me see what I can do about that. I think I can take care of that right here. This is Melissa's screen. So Melissa, I am...
Lovely elephant, but...
Yeah. I don't know how, I don't seem to be able to stop that for a second. Let me...
So Melissa, if you can look up, there will be a place on there that says share your screen.
There you go.
There we go.
Thank you. That was a surprise. I thought maybe there was something, a special message. Or as Bullwinkle Moose once said, "What's this fan mail from some flounder?" So yeah, I'm wondering if there is somebody among the participants, somebody that's on screen, that has an interest in experiencing a little induction. I notice everybody's hiding. A lot of them are on the phone tonight. But there are a few people that I see. I see Catherine Smith. I see Donald Pelles. I see a gentleman named R.C. and Pearson. And of course, your lovely South Karen Hand. Anybody want to volunteer? They're probably wondering how to do that.
So you can let us know in the chat box down below. If you take your cursor down below, there's a chat box or under participants, you can raise your hand if you would like to participate in that demo.
And while they're getting ready for that, I would just point out that what this is really about is just a really simple induction. So nothing, nothing that you need to share in terms of any kind of content. We're not really going to be working on anything, but it's just an opportunity to sort of demonstrate how able and capable of going into trance our clients are on their own, and how little assistance they need from us. Karen, not seeing any volunteers, would you just be willing to do this with me?
I would be delighted. Okay. I didn't want to take it away from somebody else who might want to do it. So, yes, I will.
All right, so Daytona Beach is going to hypnotize Chicago. And the easiest way for those of you who are watching, the person that you really want to see, I'm the one that's going to be talking, and consequently the software ends up putting my face on the screen, but I'm not really the one you want to watch. Karen would be the one that you'd like to see. So the way to do that is if you've got a little picture of Karen on your screen, if you double click on that, it will make her the main image on your screen. It pins her to the screen, and you'll be able to watch her as she participates in the process. So go ahead and give her a click there, a click or two, as it were. And afterwards, in the upper left-hand corner of your screen, there's a little button that you should see that says switch to active speaker. I appreciate that those of you that are on the telephone can't really see this, but I know that you'll be able to hear what it is that I'm saying, and we'll tell you after the fact what it is that you might have seen. So I've been going 100 miles an hour here talking to you, and normally, of course, a session wouldn't start like this. So had you come to my office, for example, with some particular issue that you were working on, I would have greeted you. We would have had a little bit of conversation. I would have invited you to, get comfortable in the chair and such as that. So assuming that we had already done that,
okay,
what I'm going to ask you now, just as you sit there, is to let yourself just be aware on a scale of 1 to 10 of how comfortable you are, how relaxed you are already. And I mean it in this way. I mean that a 1 would be really tense and uptight, and all of the muscles in your body would just be, clenched. And a 10, on the other hand, would just be the opposite of that. It would be droopy, drowsy, and completely let go and relaxed. So I'm going to be quiet for a minute, and I'm just going to let you check in with yourself and notice on the scale of 1 to 10, where would you say that you are right now?
I would say about a 6.
You're at about a 6. All right. And as long as you have your eyes closed, you can go ahead and keep them closed. And just really pay attention for a moment. That's right. And you notice that the breathing changes almost automatically. And just pay attention to the experience of being there in a body and being in a state that you have described as a 6. So this is a 6. And I wonder if you'd like to discover how you could turn that 6 into a 7 or into an 8.
Yes.
All right. So if you'd like to discover how to do that, I would invite you to begin then the exploration involved in that discovery. That is, you can check within yourself and notice just what would be required for that 6 to turn into a 7 or an 8. And you can find it within yourself. I can give you some examples of what you might look for. You might notice, for instance, that it has something to do with the rhythm of your breathing and how you can just settle in and settle down as you breathe a little more slowly and deeply. Or maybe you find that for you, it has something to do with the way that you hold your muscles, the way that you hold your body. Or maybe you find that it has something to do with the rhythm of thought and experience. Maybe even the silences and the spaces between one thought and the next thought as you let yourself go deeper. Just notice what you notice and make whatever adjustments seem appropriate to you. You may have your own way to make those adjustments. But when you've found a 7, you can go ahead and give us a nod as a way of letting us know. That's right. And as a matter of fact, as you continue to make those adjustments, When you find an 8, you can also go ahead and give us a nod. That's right. Now we could go a little farther, but for our purposes here, that's not really necessary. It's just really nice for you to be able to check around and to notice what an 8 feels like and how all on your own, you took a 6 and you turned it into a 7. And you took that 7 and you turned it into an 8. And isn't it nice to know that you can take almost any state at all and you can begin to make incremental, small adjustments and turn it into something deeper, into something more substantial, into something more useful for you. So enjoy that for a moment. And I appreciate the fact that while you're enjoying that, you also have a function as the moderator of this particular conference call that we're on. And so it's going to be appropriate in a minute or so that you return your attention back to full wakeful awareness. But it'd be good for you to just let that state linger for just a moment, just to give yourself credit, acknowledgement for what it is that you've done, and to notice that you could have turned that 8 into a 9 if you'd wanted to, and maybe even a 10 if you'd wanted to. And isn't that a nice thing to know? So now that's right, and that little smile of amusement just verifies the fact that you can appreciate that discovery. And then when you're ready to return to full room awareness, I'm just going to do what every hypnotist on the planet has done since Adam first hypnotized Eve. I am going to count from 1 to 3 and snap my fingers. And when I snap my fingers and say the number 3, you can open your eyes and you can just pop up to the surface of full room awareness. So beginning at 1, just letting that linger for a moment. Stepping up to 2, that place in the middle, that place that I like to call the hokey pokey place, where you can just sort of have 1 foot in there and 1 foot out here. And in a moment, I'm going to say the number 3 and snap my fingers. And when I say the number 3 and snap my fingers, you can open your eyes and come all the way back here. And 3, opening your eyes and coming back to the room.
What makes you think I wanted to?
Well, I did give you one suggestion, didn't I? So, so the point that I want to make through that is that it really is within you. I could have done some big, long, haranguing induction. And, I always joke about the fact that if there were a Hypnosis Hall of Fame, of course there is one, we know, but I mean, if there were a brick and mortar Hypnosis Hall of Fame, there might be a statue out in front of it with some hysterical woman leaning back in a chair and a hypnotist standing over her with his arms in a strange position and making funny eyes at her and trying to put ideas into her head. When in fact, in this particular model, I'm not interested in putting anything into your head. What I'm interested in is drawing out what lies resident within you already and making it available. So thanks for being my demo person for that.
Well, thank you very much. And I just want to feed back to you that one of the things that you brought out in me, which was not even my intention going in, but the light bulb moment I had was what a wonderful way to induce sleep or get back to sleep. Sometimes sleep is elusive to me a little bit, and I try a number of different techniques, and eventually I find one that works. But what a wonderful thing to just allow myself to discover the next level or the next level. That's great. Nice. I don't know that you intended it as a sleep technique, but thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, so at our pre-conference program then, when we do this, of course, this is just an example of a simple induction that takes advantage of the fact that the client is resourceful. We'll talk about a number of ways to do interventions with regard to therapeutic issues that clients bring into your practice. And you'll learn a bunch of new inductions and some new techniques that hopefully will be, I'm not looking to replace what it is that you're already doing, but to complement and add to what's already in the hypnotist's toolbox.
And isn't that one of our goals, really, is to fill our toolbox, get as many tools as possible, because we have all kinds of clients who come into our office, and we need to know all kinds of tricks or tools to work with them.
That is absolutely correct.
So we didn't cover all of the principles of evolutionary hypnosis, but is there one that you would consider the most important, perhaps, that you'd be willing to share?
I just really consider the most important one to be the awareness that in that chair across from you, that person that you're working with, there is absolute brilliance sitting there. That all of the wisdom, that most of the wisdom in the room is there. You don't know anything about what's going on. You know only a very little bit about what's happening with your clients, that their unconscious mind knows in great detail what's happening. Milton Erickson tells us that hypnosis is a relationship. I think that's exactly right. And to give the hypnotist his due, I don't want to take us out of the equation entirely. We facilitate a process. We are midwives in this process of evolution. Midwives are pretty important things. So how wonderful that we are blessed with or privileged with this ministry to draw people forth into their own full potential. At the end of the day, I really would like my clients to know that their lives are different because they are powerful, not because I am powerful and did something to them, but because there was something within them.
And you are really empowering them to continue to evolve, are you not?
That's correct. That's absolutely right.
I'm curious, Michael, do you see clients once, twice, three times, or do you see clients over the course of years?
All of the above. I have some clients that I have been seeing since, I have one particular woman in Miami now who used to live here in Orlando. And for a while I saw her weekly and then bi-weekly and then once a month, and then she moved to Miami, and now I see her online about once every 2 or 3 months when she's got something else that she wants to work on. But it's usually about different subjects and different issues, and she's really come to appreciate just the experience of being brought out. Then I have a lot of clients that I've seen just a couple of times. It's rare for me to see a client only once. I really do like to have some sort of follow-up, and so generally 2 sessions is kind of a minimum with me.
So you do kind of get to see them evolve.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what a wonderful thing that is it not?
Yeah, I'm starting to think that I should have been taking before and after pictures all along. That might be nice. Seriously, because some people, as they really come into their own, their lives just change in dramatic ways, and and they're out there in the world doing great stuff.
So we have just a few minutes left with Michael, and if you have a question, now would be the time to either raise your hand or type it up in the chat box, and before we move on. But while we're waiting for someone to either get their question typed in, Michael, or to raise their hand one way or another, you also have a seminar that you're doing at the conference this year.
That's right.
And tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that seminar is called Magic Hands.
I think I'm a magic hand.
Well, it's named after you.
Thank you.
you and your kin. And it comes from Ernest Rossi. It is essentially an ideodynamic process, and it's characterized. So some of you may have seen me even do this before. It's characterized by the quick and dirty description of it is the client is deep in trance, and one hand finds its way down to a resting position in their lap as they review the history of the issue that they're working on, and the various beliefs that have formed around it, and the complications that it's created in their life, and any learnings that they've had about it, and any development that they've had, and lighting up all the appropriate neurocircuitry associated with that side. And then the other hand makes a similar journey downward as they begin to consider possible solutions and what the implications of making the change will be, and how they can future pace it into their life, and such as that. And it's just really a beautiful technique that Ernest Rossi developed. Ernest Rossi, Milton Erickson's sidekick, and arguably, no pun intended, but Milton Erickson's right-hand man. Erickson was paralyzed on the right side, and so it was Ernie Rossi actually who wrote all of Erickson's books and manuscripts for him, and so the closest to Erickson that there ever was. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful technique, and I think John Grinder, the NLP guy, has once said that what's required to produce change is congruity in a ritual, and I think it's really a beautiful ritual. I do see that
Yes, I was
Janelle
just going
has.
to ask you if you'll use your magic hands to unmute Janelle because she has a question for you.
Oh yeah, I've got that control, don't I?
Yes.
Hello, Janelle. You are.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, I have a question. Um, I was doing a session with a client and she wanted to actually like remove a piece of herself. And I had read somewhere where you shouldn't remove a piece of yourself, you should remove like the feeling or the negativity behind that piece to let that piece become the positive piece, and that every piece of ourselves is as important.
Mm-hmm.
But with what you just said, am I wrong? I mean, was she right because that was what she came up with? Do I need to look at that with a little different eyes?
Yeah. So no, Janelle, you're not wrong at all. You're absolutely correct.
Okay.
And I'm glad that you. So apparently the way that you heard what I said wasn't what I wanted you to hear. So let me be really clear about that. Uh,
Okay.
it's what she came up with consciously. It's what she said to you. Here's what I want to do.
Well, no, she came up with it under hypnosis.
Oh, she did.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Well, that's very interesting.
Well,
So
and some of it, no, yeah.
so
And then I steered her in the other direction, and she did what I said and just removed the negativity, and then this piece became this wonderful piece. And then afterwards she went back to, well, I should have removed the piece, and she didn't remember that little piece with me where she found this beautiful piece within herself.
so
That's what happened.
how did it all end up? Did she end up getting the change that she wanted after all, or was it left incomplete?
Well, I told her that, well, no, you kept the piece and this piece was good and blah blah blah, and she seemed really happy with the results, and I haven't heard anything from her since.
Good. I'll tell you something. And while we're talking about this, pieces of ourselves is an interesting phrase. I have no idea what that actually means.
Well, like a part or
I get
or a
it.
sub-personality,
Yeah, I get it.
They
And
got many names.
I don't know what it meant to her, especially when we use words like subpersonalities. Man, this language is so loaded.
Yes,
And here's what I know is that within, as I said, within my client, there's absolute brilliance. Uh,
right. No, and that's what I was going for.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I really want to let her know that each and every part of her is there for a reason, and to
Yes.
ask that part what its intention is and find out what it's there to do for her.
Yeah, I just thought it was really strange that she ended up forgetting about that part becoming so wonderful.
Yeah. Without being able to talk to the woman specifically, I can't say a whole lot more about that other than I really respect every single part of every one of my clients, and the idea of, I am an ex-priest after all. So one of the things that I joke about is I think people come to my office asking for exorcisms with some regularity. They say, I've got some part of me that I want you to say the magic words and cast out into the outer darkness. And I'm like, not so fast.
Right.
Let's really honor that part and find out it is there with good intention. And maybe the way that it's going about getting its intention met is not the best of all possible choices, but the intention itself, that behind that part there is something of value, and we really want to make sure that it gets expressed.
Okay, good. Then I did what I was supposed to.
Sounds like you did. And Janelle, I don't mean to interrupt here, but our time with Michael, we could pick your brain all night, Michael, and still have probably more questions left over. But it is time for us to move on. What I would encourage you to do, Janelle, is stop by the Magic Hands class, because it's phenomenal, and it's really a wonderful thing that you might be able to either use with that client if you see her again, or
Well, someday I'll be able to afford to go to the
Well, then you'll continue to join us here, and you'll continue to join us on the virtual chapter meetings, because no doubt it will come up again and again and again. And Michael,
I plan on going to a conference eventually.
Yeah, good. It's a good time. Good. And we'd love to meet you in person. So, Michael, it's time for you to unmute all of the mics so that we can give you your proper due, and everybody gets a chance to say thank you, applaud, applaud, applaud. And then we will take a step forward.
All right, everybody, shower me with love.
Yeah, so
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Bye.
Michael.
we love you,
Thanks for
Michael.
sharing, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Take
All right,
care of that
so
call.
we are going to remute the microphones.
Here we go. There you are, Karen.
Okay, except for Michael and me and Don Pelles, who is joining us now. And I am now going to switch places with Michael again and let him back in the driver's seat, unless you know, you need to give that voice a break, Michael. But otherwise, I'll give you back the driver's seat, and we will talk about Don's presentation coming up at the conference.
If you could drive the first 10 miles or so, I'll be up with you in a moment, and I'd appreciate that.
I would be happy to do that.
Let's remind everybody about the CEUs once again. You can go out to the IACT or IMDHA website, whichever one you are a member of, or both if you're a member of both. Sign in with your member ID and let them know that you have spent an hour and a half with us and you want to have your credit for that. And that this recorded program will be posted on the IACT IMDHA forum tomorrow. It will be posted on the virtual chapter group on Facebook, and it will also be posted on the IACT and IMDHA websites. At the top of those websites, you'll find an area that says conference, and if you click on it, one of the things in the drop-down box is teleconferences, and if you click on that, you'll see all of the teleconferences that we have recorded so far, and be able to hear any of them that you might have missed.
And don't forget to join the virtual chapter group on Facebook, because we post all of this there. This is an offshoot of the virtual chapter, after all. On the second Tuesday of every month, we have a wonderful virtual chapter meeting where we bring in hypnotists from all over the world to talk about some really interesting things. And when you attend, you always qualify for seats there as well for IACT. So it's time now to open the microphone of Don Pelles, and Donald Pelles is joining us to talk about acing smoking. And I was teasing him a little bit last week. I think he's going to teach us about smoking cessation and not how to ace the act of smoking.
This was a mistake.
Oh.
No, I put in a proposal for acing smoking cessation, and the staff got it wrong, and they left out cessation. The title is Acing Smoking Cessation.
So you want me to stop teasing you about that? Is that what you're telling me now?
Yes, yeah.
I'm sorry, Tom.
It's really mean. It's cruel. Well, stop it.
Okay, I will clear it up every week until we get to the conference. I thought perhaps that it was something that Bill Clinton might hire you to do, since he had said he couldn't inhale. But, you know, I understand now what we're doing here. So Donald is a hypnotherapist in Kensington, Maryland, and he works with his clients to resolve their difficult issues and thus transform their lives. And he utilizes hypnosis and neurolinguistics. Hypnotherapy is his third successful career. He was previously a mathematics professor, making
Correct.
significant contributions to the field, and then a software developer. Oh my gosh, are you an analytical type, I guess? Donald's very happily married to Rosalind. They have 3 grown sons, 5 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. So you have an evolving family as well, Donald. When do you have time to do hypnosis?
Well, none of them are, fortunately or unfortunately, none of them are here.
Oh, well,
So
that's how you need the time for this then.
I have to travel to them or get on Skype or bring them here, that kind of
Right.
thing.
Right. Well, I'm so glad that you, and I honestly, Donald, of course, knew that you were talking about smoking cessation, and boy, is that big business for all of us. So it's one of the things that people are really familiar with hypnosis as being something to use for. So
Right.
Tell me about what we can do to do it better.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what I do. I do 3 sessions. And I know some people advertise, oh, I'll do it in 1 session. But I like 3. So the first session is a 2-hour session, and I would say the majority of my clients are done with tobacco after that session. There's a lot packed into it. We'll talk about it in a minute. But then I do 2 more. They're shorter, they're for reinforcement and follow-up. And really, I think the reason I do all three is it increases their success rate.
So if they quit after the first one, do you ever get any pushback for them coming back for the others?
Occasionally they just don't show. I mean, they just don't make the appointment, or they, because they've already paid for it. That's what it's a package. They've already paid for it. So if they do 2 sessions and don't show for the third, it means either they've completely quit, they're out of the woods, they don't see any reason to come back for a third session, or they feel it hasn't worked for them and they're just completely despairing, and why should I waste my time? I've already wasted my money. And I don't usually get to interview them well, sometimes I call them.
Well, you actually do follow-ups with your clients, do you
Yeah,
not?
I do. I call them, depending on the client. Sometimes I'll call them, a week or 2 later. I'll definitely call them a year later and find out if they're still smoke-free. And when I do that, 75 to 80% I find after a year are still smoke-free. So I feel that's pretty good.
75 to 80%, I'm saying that's great after a year. So you do want to, if you want to see a lot of clients, smoking cessation is a great way to do it. Don Pelles' full-day workshop will be on Thursday, the 17th, right before the conference starts. And so tell us a little bit about how you go about this. What are your protocols or materials involved?
Okay, well, let's talk about the first session.
Excellent.
And then I'll go on to the later ones. There's a lot in there. I'll start out usually. For one thing, I'll show them 4 ways that they can stop a craving, and I tell them you may walk out of here, and some do, and just never think about having another cigarette. But some people do have continuing cravings even after the first session. It's a little dicey. I don't want to suggest that they're going to have cravings, but I don't want them to feel that if they have a desire for a cigarette, that it's failed.
Right.
So I show them both possibilities. So if you have a craving, I'm going to show you 4 different things that you can do to stop it. Okay. I'll tell you what they are. There's tapping. Faster EFT. Mm-hmm. I show when they walk into my office. First of all, I ask them not to smoke for at least 4 hours before they come in. For some of them, that's really hard. Some of them will not smoke for a whole day before they come in. It just depends. So they come, they sit down on my couch. I usually start the session. I've got a couch in my office and then a very nice, comfortable armchair. Where I do most of the hypnosis. They'll sit down on my couch, I'm at the other end, and I'll say, so when was your last cigarette? 8 o'clock this morning. I'll say, so do you want one now? Most of them will say, yeah. You should call me up, Michael. I can help you there.
I was just thinking that's probably what some of your smoking clients sound like.
Yeah. So do you want one now? And they'll say, yeah. And I'll say, well, let me show you how to take that away. And I'll do 1 or 2. Why are we watching Michael? It's my turn.
No, I'm seeing you only.
Oh, you're seeing me. Okay. I'm just seeing Michael. Okay. Now I'm seeing you. Okay. So I'll show them. We'll do a couple rounds of tapping and just 4 points, like here, and there. I usually anchor a feeling of peace first. So we do 4 rounds of tapping. Mostly, I'll say, where is that craving? And they'll say, well, a lot of them say, oh, it's gone. I don't know what happened. If it's still something there, I'll do another round, even 3 rounds. And it's always gone after 2 or 3 rounds. Mm-hmm. So that serves that's a good way to start the session. It's a convincer. It suggests to them that, hey, this is going to work. And then I show them something, right following that, I show them something that I learned from Win Wenger. I don't know if anybody knows Win.
Yeah.
You know Win?
Yeah.
Yeah. Win had a whole list of breathing techniques, and this one I took from him called pleasure breathing. It's just, I start with spices, and they breathe in, they sniff vanilla, and then I give them, I think, cloves and cinnamon. Everybody likes those practically. And then I suggest that I'm having them breathe deep, slow breaths, and I say, your job here is to enjoy each breath more than the previous one. And then I have them imagine, you say, imagine one of these scents or something else you like, and then I lead them into circular breathing. Breathing in the scent, imagine you're stroking velvet with your breathing, and circular breathing where there's almost no pause between the in-breath and the out-breath. I tell them if you do this for 90 seconds, the craving will go away. Now, if you do it's true that if you do almost anything else for 90 seconds, the craving will go away. But that's true if you do the pleasure breathing. Plus, it's a really nice way to relax.
Sure.
Yeah. And then, let's see, I don't have my, but then basically I'll go over their intake form with them. It's like a 4-5-page intake form. And I'll go over that. And I'll ask them, at the end of that, I'll say something like, I don't want to be too intrusive, but generally speaking, what's your political orientation? Now, I do that for a reason. In the script, which is at the very end of the session, it's about a 20-minute hypnosis session, I'll demonize the tobacco industry. So if I have a client, which most of them are around here, I'm in Maryland, I'm in suburban Maryland.
Right.
If I have a client who's like a liberal or, which most of them are here, I'll just rub it in. I'll talk about and I learned this from Melissa Tears, the men, the 1% of 1% of 1% that are on the boards of the big tobacco companies. Ultra rich, Tea Party, Trump supporting, I'll just lay it on. If on the other hand, I were to have a conservative Republican, I tone it down a lot.
Sure. Sure.
Just, basically, they're just ultra rich bastards. Now, I don't know what I would do if I were to get somebody who's actually on the board of a big tobacco company in my office, but that hasn't happened yet. So I really demonize them. I just lay it on about how they pander tobacco to people all over the world, making them sick, and they put all kinds of toxic chemicals in and so forth. But anyway, but I asked them when I did this, I did a 2-hour presentation last year. The main criticism was that it wasn't long enough, and that's why I'm doing a one-day format. But one person thought it was really bad that I was indoctrinating people. And I pushed back. I said, I'm not indoctrinating. Mike, are you okay?
He is. He's going to survive.
Yeah. So I said, I'm asking them first. And I'm telling them according to their own political orientation, which they've already told me. I don't think that's indoctrinating. Anyhow, we argued about it. But other than that, the only criticism was that 2 hours wasn't enough for this program. Let's see. In the course of it, I do a pre-talk about hypnosis. I do a pre-talk about tobacco, some of which is, what's that book? I can't think of the guy's name. Stop Smoking Now. Basically, talks about the nicotine cycle and how when you feel that the cigarette relaxes you, actually all it's doing is undoing the withdrawal effects of the previous cigarette, and there's no such thing as one cigarette. I really emphasize that. The one cigarette is the beginning of a chain of 10, 100, 1,000 more cigarettes until you quit again. There's no such thing as one cigarette. I emphasize that. I do 4 trances with them. I show them the zone. I call it what did Michael Elner call it? It's it's from quantum focusing. That's the origin, and I've embellished it quite a bit. But I call it the zone. You can see it on YouTube if you finding the zone on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's basically a self-hypnosis. I teach them self-hypnosis. And then I follow that up with what I call power self. Michael Elner called it power image. But they envision themselves exactly the way they want to be. And then step into that. This is in hypnosis. Step into that person. Experience what that's like. So basically, I jump them right to having solved the problem. And then I have them go through a situation being that power self. I do another hypnosis session, and these are bang, 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 one after the other. So the person is in and out of trance really the last hour.
I'm curious, Don, do you call the tapping segment a trance, or is that?
Well, no, I don't count that.
Okay, it's not counted as a trance.
But,
Right,
but you could argue that that's a trance. I mean, so you could argue a lot of it's a trance.
I'm not trying to argue. I just want to know when that.
Remember Dan Clary saying once that when they come into your office, they're in a trance?
Yes.
And our job is to find them a better trance.
Yes. Yes.
I have them, by this time, I can just say to them, take yourself into the zone and nod to me when you're there. And they will. And then I do a technique. It's similar to what you were doing, Michael. I have them envision a line with tick marks on it. And there's a slider on that line, and I'll say, right now the slider is at whatever level you're at, between where 0 is, wide awake, and 10 is the deepest hypnotic state you can imagine. Right now that slider is wherever you are, whatever number you're at, between 0 and 10. And people will say anywhere from 2. I've had people say 8.
That's beautiful.
And then I say, now reach out with your mind, grab hold of the slider. Say they started at 4. Grab hold of the slider, move it to 5. And as you do, feel yourself going deeper and deeper. And when you and the slider get to 5, I usually have them lift a finger.
Nice.
Just let this finger that I'm about to touch lift up. It's an ideomotor signal, but I'm not worried whether it's conscious or unconscious. And I'll have them keep moving the slider. Sometimes I'll have them move it back. I'll do a little fractionation. Move it back to 6.5. When it reaches 6.5, open your eyes. Close your eyes. Reach out and move the slider now to 8. Sometimes I'll do a little of that. Depends on how I feel, how they're responding. I'll have them move it several. I'll do a heavy legs convincer. Suggest that their legs are getting heavy. And I don't say you can't move your legs. I'll say the harder you try, the heavier they get. Nobody moves their legs.
Nice.
Return your legs to normal. Reach out. Move the slider to 9. Going very deep now. And then I'll do this I learned from Melissa Tears, a 1-breath trigger. It's a post-hypnotic suggestion. I'll have them take a deep breath in, hold it, and as you release, say to yourself, 3, 2, 1. You'll feel a profound wave of relaxation throughout your mind and your body. And any craving will just vanish, disappear, dissolve. And then I'll explain, after I've done that a couple times, what a post-hypnotic suggestion is, that you can do this whenever you want, in or out of hypnosis. And then I count back down, move the slider, move it back, all the way back to 0. I'll do a swish or two, because I've asked them on the intake form, what are the situations that you associate with smoking? So for instance, if they're out on their deck, what do you see from that deck? People know what a swish is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'll do a swish pattern from NLP. And then I do the 20-minute hypnosis session, and that's just full of stuff.
That's lovely.
I demonize the hypnosis industry. I cast tobacco as a false friend, a betrayer, and then an abuser. And then I also demonize the pharmaceutical industry, which sells you drugs when you become sick from their toxic tobacco, and the insurance industry, which pays you too little, and it's always too late to help you when you really need it. I'll do a little bit of talk about how you're not going to gain weight because, which a lot of people are afraid of.
Right.
Because once your taste buds come back, food's going to taste better, so you don't need as much of it.
Nice.
Yeah. So you'll actually find yourself slimming down. And sometimes I put in a color red trim. I mean, I just throw the whole kitchen sink at them. It takes about 20 minutes. That's 2 hours, that whole thing. Yeah, that's the first session.
And then do you send them home with certain instructions?
Yes. They're to take themselves into the zone 3 times a day, at least. They're to do power self once a day. And I record that final session, and I ask them to listen to it 2 or 3 times before the next session, which now the first reinforcement and follow-up, I like to do it within about 4 days, because most of them have quit after the first session. But with some of them, it's kind of tenuous. And I don't want to leave them hanging.
Right.
Just on their own. So they come back in 4 days. So, they finish the first session. All they have to worry about is making it 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to reinforce. And the 2 reinforcement sessions are much more open-ended. They're anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half, although I have had them go 2 hours. I schedule 2 hours. And I just use whatever seems appropriate. I use core transformation. I do wholeness with them. Sometimes I'll do eye movements, visual squash. I just, basically use whatever I have available, whatever it seems they need. So I'm going to cover, in my class, I'm going to cover the first session. In fact, I have a whole outline of the session. I have all the materials. I have the 20-minute hypnosis script, which actually has a lot of wiggle room in it.
Yeah.
To adapt to the client. I have all that, and then I'm going to talk about some of the techniques I use in the 2 follow-up reinforcement sessions. And this time, since it's not just 2 hours, I can do some demonstrations. And obviously, I'm not going to teach core transformation and wholeness in that time. That would take like 4 or 5 days. But
yeah.
But I'm going to give them a real good taste for it and show them where to go to understand more. And, people, those are my preferred tools. Other hypnotists will have other things that they can put in there, which will be the equivalent.
Well, it sounds like it's an appropriate class for either brand new hypnotists or people who've been working in the business for a long time who want to pick up some new tools.
I think so. Mark Andreas encouraged me to do this. So I guess I don't know if it was an email or talking on Skype, and Mark said, "How do you do smoking cessation?" So I told him a little bit, and he said, "Well, could you tell me more?" So I told him pretty much, what I've been saying here. He says, "You ought to teach that." I said, "Really?"
Yeah.
He said, "Yeah, you ought to teach that." I said, "Well, okay."
Yeah.
So I worked up an outline, and I put in for this was 1920. What century were we in? This was a couple years ago, and I put in a proposal to IMDHA to do a 2-hour class, and then I did that last year. And then I thought, well, let's do it as a whole day. And I think people are going to love it.
I think they really are. Oh, sorry. I think they really are. And Donna, if I might say, I love your style. It is so gentle. It is so warm. You're a man after my heart with regard to that. And all day is what I think this really wants. So for the folks that are coming to the expo, you can get a little bit about it in a 1-hour program somewhere, and people have done that stuff before. But really, smoking cessation for a whole lot of hypnotherapists is the heart of their practice. So how lovely that you have this available. Don, I also, and forgive me for just being logistic for a minute, but you mentioned earlier that you were seeing me on the screen at a time that maybe I shouldn't have been. So I just want to point out, if anybody is seeing anyone other than the active speaker, it's because perhaps after the demonstration that I did with Karen, you didn't get your computer turned back. So you might find in the upper left-hand corner of your window something that says return to active speaker mode, if that's the case. And you should be seeing the person who's talking. So hopefully they've been watching you the whole time. I hope that they haven't been watching me have my coughing fits.
I think what happened was you coughed, and that triggered the change in the...
Yeah, quite probably.
Well, Don, with your mathematical background, I'm expecting that you're going to be giving certain formulas along the way, and scripts and ways for people to follow if they're brand new at this and can take it out and just use it.
There's some, I write out the script, if you like, for the zone and for Power Self. The 20-minute session is more, like I said, there's a lot of wiggle room in there. You can include this and not include that. You can vary it depending upon their political orientation. So that's more flexible. It's kind of choose your own adventure. Remember those?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you have them come back for session 2 and then session 3. In session 2, you described that a little bit. What happens in session 3?
More the same. Again, the session 2 and session 3 are much more open. The only scripts I use in those, there's a couple I like from Paul Durbin. And I just kind of use them maybe at the end of the session as a feel-good thing. One is Cleansing Waterfall, where you just, you imagine it. You know that script?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. You just guide them through. They're walking through the woods, and they come to a pond, and there's a waterfall, and they step under the waterfall. And the waterfall is just cleansing them of all negative emotions and feelings. And then the other one is good health, success, and what's the other one? Something like that. And it's basically basically congratulating them on having stopped the smoking habit and just taking note of good health, success, and motivation. Just reinforcing some of that. Those are just nice feel-good things. I record it for them. People like to have a recording they can, listen to. So really, if I do those, I don't always do them. It just depends on the time and how I feel and what I think, But sessions 2 and 3 are much more open-ended. They're more like the regular hypnosis NLP sessions that I do with clients.
And I'm curious, do you record them as you're doing the sessions with them, or do you have pre-recorded processes that you give them?
When I record, it's different. I used to carry around a little digital recorder. I've only been doing this for like 11 years, so I don't think I ever used a tape recorder, although we refer to them as tapes.
Right.
But I carried around a little digital recorder, and then I'd go home, or if I used a laptop, I'd hook it up to the laptop and download it, and then I'd cut a CD, burn a CD from it, and hand them the CD. Well, these days, practically all of them have a cell phone. So I use the voice memo or voice recorder on the cell phone,
Right.
and then they have it. They take it home with them. Occasionally, somebody doesn't. Once in a while, once a year, I find somebody who doesn't have a cell phone, and I have to go. I have to make well, either I have to record it on my phone and mail it to them, or if they don't have email, there are people that don't have email.
Right.
I actually do burn it, go home. I have to figure it out every time, but I go home and burn a CD and mail it to them. But that's rare.
Yes, I know.
That's rare. So, yeah.
So Don's one-day smoking cessation program is going to be Thursday before the conference. But on Saturday, Don, you're also going to do a seminar on pain at your pain clinic. Tell us about that a little bit.
Okay. So for the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, maybe more, I've been volunteering at a wonderful local organization called Hope Connections for Cancer. And it's a nonprofit cancer support organization. And they have, I guess, they have medical stuff, maybe some medical stuff. And they also have yoga and guided visualization, which of course we know is hypnosis. And I do it twice a month. It's a 1-hour hypnosis for symptom relief. And typically people come, some of the same people come week after week, month after month, and a lot of time it's new. But I'll start it out saying, does anybody have any pain? And almost always, these are cancer patients and sometimes caregivers. Almost always somebody says yes. So then I'll give a little talk about pain, about how, pain is a useful signal, that it's telling you usually to avoid something. If you sprain your ankle, the pain is telling you don't walk on that ankle, but that sometimes pain is not really necessary. If you've got an ache in your knee and you've had it checked out and it still aches and there's nothing they can do about it, would it be okay if that pain felt better? And then I have I'll just take them through a number of very quick techniques that work in combination probably 95% of the time to take away the pain. And then I'll do other things, but I think I can easily fill an hour with just showing people different ways to ameliorate pain.
How nice. So pain management and smoking cessation, two of the biggies in our profession that Don has to offer here at the conference. I wish I could go to your smoking cessation.
I wish I could go to yours.
As you know, I am otherwise occupied.
But do they record those? No, they don't.
No,
right?
they don't. They don't record those.
Just during the conference.
So the pain thing will be recorded, of course. So we do want to give people a chance if anybody has a question for you. I noticed a little bit earlier that Jacqueline Norton had her hand in the air. So Jackie, I'm going to unmute you here, and you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hello.
Hey, Jackie.
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
Hi, Michael. Hi, Dawn. I have a couple of questions. I am a former smoker, and I wanted to know if you are a former smoker. And also, if you have kept any statistics on the people that have quit over your time of doing the smoking sensation.
Sensation.
Sorry.
It is a sensation.
I'm a little nervous. I've never been on here before.
Well,
so I'm sorry.
actually, I've never had the smoking sensation.
I have.
Not with tobacco, anyway, and I haven't smoked anything for 45 years.
Well, I haven't smoked cigarettes in 10 years, but I can tell you there are still times that I want to smoke.
That's what my wife says.
Yes.
And for her, it's been 36, 37 years. Yeah. But so no, I've never smoked, and really the worst habit I've ever had was cracking my knuckles, which is how I got into hypnosis. I'll tell that story another time. Yeah, it's a good story. But the statistics, I call them, and I try to call them a year later and just note down who's smoke-free and who's not. I have not actually tallied it up lately, but for a year or so I did. And that's where I came up with the 75 to 80% figure.
75. Wow, that's wonderful.
That really is excellent.
Wow.
Yeah, well, that means that 20 to 25% are smoking a year later. Although I have had people, so this one guy I worked with 3 or 4 years ago, we did the first session, and then we did core transformation with the part that wanted to smoke. And for this guy, the part was a demon.
Mm.
When you asked, what do you want? It said, I want you dead.
Wow.
And it took a few iterations before it flipped to positive.
Wow.
And we had a great session. And then I guess the third one was a really good session. The guy reported, well, I'm still smoking, but this changed my life.
Wow.
And he really meant it. I mean, this had completely changed his life. So I follow him. We follow each other on Facebook. And a few months ago, he reported that he was no longer smoking. So I just chipped in. I guess you could say this is breaking confidence, but with this guy, I guess I said, well, can I take credit? And he said, yes, it's all because of you.
Wow.
Nice.
So even if somebody's smoking at a year, after a year, they're still not a hopeless case. And I've had others too, that it just took them a while. And they still have the recording. And they're still doing, hopefully they can, at least if they want, they're still doing the zone. Just taking yourself into a hypnotic meditative state with finding the zone 3 times a day, people change just from that.
Yes.
In positive ways, sometimes unexpected ways. And so if someone just is still doing or goes back to doing it a year or 2 later, there's still hope.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah, thanks for your question.
And by the way, Donna, I really want to give you credit for your integrity with regard to following up and getting that information. Every now and again, I talk to hypnotherapists who claim alarmingly high success rates with smoking, and the way that they manage to explain it away is that they say that they give their clients a guarantee that if they're still smoking, they can come back for additional sessions. And then they say, well, nobody ever comes back. So I assume that I've gotten 100% success rate.
Well, there are 2 reasons that they might not come back. One is that they're completely smoke-free and they don't come back. Yeah. And the other is that they're just despairing that this didn't work, and why should I come back for more when it didn't work in the first time? Now, here's an interesting thing. If someone, and I don't just wait a year, I usually follow up with them fairly soon. If someone is still smoking after 3 sessions, I will do a 4th session with them for free. I mean, as part of the package. But I don't tell them that. Here's why. What if I tell them, okay, we're going to do 3 sessions. If that doesn't work, we'll do a 4th session. Right. What's the suggestion there?
Then anytime they want a cigarette, they can always go, well, what the heck? Donna's going to let me come back for another session anyway, so I can smoke today because it's my anniversary, or we're having a party.
Well, plus, it's a suggestion that maybe it won't work.
Yeah, right. Exactly right.
So I don't want to do that. But I say to myself, when I check up on them, if they're still smoking after 3 sessions, I'll do a 4th session with them. No charge. Yeah. This is a general principle. I worked with a 5-year-old kid once who had a phobia of bees. He came in, we did a number of things, including a version of the fast phobia cure, which we did with pictures. And so when the session was over, we went outside, and I'm talking to his mother. And I said to her, and he's standing there, I said to his mother, well, I think he's going to be fine. But if not, bring him back and we'll do another session. So the kid is standing there listening to this. He's 5. He's pretty, aware. What's he thinking?
This was fun. I want to do it again.
He might have been thinking that, or he might have been thinking, oh, maybe it's not going to work. Maybe it didn't work, because if she has to bring me back, maybe it's not going to work. So sure enough, he got home, phobia came back. We did another session. This time, I took him out behind my building where there was a bush. This was spring. There were bees flying around the bush, and he was fine. He saw it. His mother saw it. That was it. But
Yeah.
You want to be very careful about giving anything that might suggest to a client this might not work.
Don, when you're dealing with smokers, do you ever do groups or couples?
I don't do groups. I have done couples. When I will do couples. I'll do them together in the first session, because the first session is kind of lockstep. There's not much flexibility. I mean, there's a little with the way I use the script at the end, and actually, if I have a couple as part of that script, I have them sitting next to each other. If it's a marital couple or sex involved,
Or an extramarital couple.
yeah, whatever. I mean, if there's a sexual relationship, an intimate relationship, let's put it that way, I'll have them reach out and hold hands, and I'll talk about how they're doing this together, that they can help their partner by setting an example, and that's part of the script. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Don. That's really important to know.
Yeah, but then the follow-up sessions, I insist on doing individually, because those are really much more adapted to the individual client.
Tailor-made. So in case someone wants to get in touch with you, how would they get in touch with you?
They could go on my website and leave and in the contact me, there's a form they can fill out.
And what is your website?
HypnosisSilverSpring.com. Hypnosis Silver Spring, which is the name of the city where I started my practice.com.
Okay.
They can email me at don@hypnosissilverspring.com, or they can call me 301-618-9801.
There you go.
And we appreciate that very much. Get there a day early, because you've got to choose Michael, Don. Boy, there's lots of stuff to do. Get there early and enjoy the beach. Yeah.
And I look forward to seeing you there.
It is going to be wonderful. So Don, hang on just for a minute. We want to give you your proper send-off. And before we do that, we just need to remind everybody once again, you can get your CEUs by going to the IACT or IMDHA website, logging in with your member ID, and claim your CEUs. You can get a recording or a replay of this program tonight on the IACT IMDHA forum, or on the IACT or the IMDHA website under teleconferences. And it will also be posted on the virtual chapter Facebook group tomorrow. So do watch for that. It has been delightful in spite of my cough medicine and disruptive nature. I really enjoyed this, and I always love hearing from you, Don, because you really are one of those guys that I know understands that what we are doing is service to the world and to the community, and God bless you for it. We really appreciate you, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Michael. Michael, yeah. Take a deep breath in. No, don't.
No deep breaths. No deep breaths.
Michael,
easy breath.
And as Michael unmutes everybody so that we can say goodbye, I just want to remind you, join us the same time next week. Next week, Michael will interview me about the importance of listening, and Queeth Neal will join us after that. And so it'll be another exciting presenters series next Wednesday as usual.
Excellent. All right. So everybody say goodnight to Don, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Don.
Good night, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.